All right, we're recording.
All right.
Outstanding. All right. Hey, Dan, I'll kick it off. And Admiral, what we're going to do here is a little bit of preview. We've got a bio that we're going to read for you afterward as part of this. I don't expect this will take more than 20 or 30 minutes. And I'll kick it off with a few questions and some opening remarks, and then I'll kick it over to Dan, and we'll go from there. Let's just have some fun and go from there.
Sounds great.
Okay, we are here today with Admiral Ted Carter, who is the outgoing Naval Academy Superintendent and the current president of the University of Nebraska. We are honored to have someone of Admiral Carter's esteemed background and just an impressive American who has been kind enough to offer his time and spend some time with us here this morning to talk to our audience of outgoing transitioning service members, military spouses, and veterans who are seeking employment. And I know that we're going to spend some time here and get an awful lot of insight from him on how, especially given his unique position, veterans can be successful in the private sector as they transition into an educational environment on campus. He's got some very unique insights on that. Admiral Carter, we know that you are under, like all university leadership and college leaders, incredible amounts of pressure right now. There are many, many challenges that you're facing, and we are just very blessed that you were able to spend some time with us. You've got students who are returning to campus, and as we all see on the news, they don't always behave the way that we want them to behave. And I think Nebraska is very fortunate to have some leader of your caliber over there in Lincoln. So very honored to have you here this morning with us, sir, and happy to get started. So some leading questions. So you're class of 81, you played hockey at the Naval Academy. The first question I have to ask you, just to break the ice here, is who do you have picked for winning the Stanley Cup in this crazy NHL season?
It is a crazy NHL season. I'm a Bruins fan by living in New England most of all my young life. The Tampa Bay Lightning just crushed the Bruins. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay just because they beat the Bruins. I know Philadelphia's got a hot run going on right now. It'll be interesting series.
That sounds good. We're here in Pittsburgh, and our Penguins exited early, much prematurely than we thought. But
the lowest ranked team of all things.
They have a storied program. They'll be back.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other question I have for you, sir, is when are we going to see the midshipmen and the Cornhuskers tangle on the gridiron?
Well, two things I've learned here through the last 4 months dealing with a global pandemic, a pandemic of racial unrest and economic challenges, that I never use two words, never and always. So I won't say that I can guarantee that Navy and Nebraska will meet, but I won't say never. So I will just leave that door cracked open for now.
Yes, sir. We'll be interested to see if that could potentially happen at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Listen, you've got a tremendous background. You had some amazing achievements while you were superintendent at the Naval Academy. And like I mentioned earlier, Nebraska is lucky to have a leader of your caliber and track record. I'm curious, can you offer any advice to transitioning service members who are thinking about going back to school today, using almost all of whom are going to be eligible for the post 9/11 GI Bill, going back to a college campus, in terms of some of the challenges that they might think they face, maybe having been out of the classroom for several years, and now, adult learners for the most part, some people who are in their 20s, not high school, recent high school graduates. Any advice for them as they make that transition and those thoughts?
Yeah, Chris, it's a great question. And, as I took over here in January, one of the things that we focused on is making sure that as higher ed is having to shift, and this global pandemic is proving out how critical that is, the institutions that are going to be successful are going to be the ones that have affordability and accessibility for all. And our transitioning military are a key part of that audience. So you see I'm wearing an Omaha shirt here today. You know, we have 4 campuses at the University of Nebraska system, you know, not just the Cornhuskers, but the Omaha Mavericks, the Kearney Lopers, and we have a medical center. And we have focused on making affordability and accessibility our true North Star. Our Omaha campus is one of the top 10 active duty and retired military schools in the country. And it's only getting bigger. And one of the things that we did specifically is we reduced the online course per credit hour by 9% at Omaha and 7% in Lincoln. And that has shown a jump in our enrollment. In fact, the University of Nebraska system had declining enrollment for the last 5 years. In the middle of a global pandemic, when most major universities were seeing a 5 to 15% decline in enrollment, we actually just went up about 3% overall. And some of that is due to this transitioning military audience, adult learners. That's a great word that you use. There are a lot of people out there with some partial college credits, maybe need a year or year and a half to finish. Our online programs are so easy to get into, especially in Omaha, that I'd ask every military member to take a look at us. You can do it from anywhere, and it's really affordable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great advice. And for our transitioning service members, that's a really important piece, is the portability of that educational offering. So we're curious to see some of the differences in the expectations of the stakeholders that you saw at the many stakeholders that a university has, right? From students to parents, to the corporations that lend for research, the board of trustees, the local communities. I mean, the staff, so many stakeholders. What are some of the challenges, the difference in the challenges that you see catering to the stakeholders at the Naval Academy, a service academy, versus a civilian institution at Nebraska?
Yeah, there are a few things that are very common. You know, education is still the most important part of what we do, whether it be at a service academy or at a major state university. You know, the methodology and oversights are a little bit different. Where the funding lines come from are obviously different. We get about 1/3 of our funding through state taxes here, whereas the Naval Academy is the majority of all of it is federal money that comes in. But at the end of the day, the value of education is still, you know, what drives us. And I still believe, just as we did at the Naval Academy, what we call the whole person education, you know, the moral, the mental, the physical, that has application on any campus in the country. And that was one of the reasons that in April, at the, you know, going into the height of the pandemic, we declared as one of the first universities in the country that we were going to be in person in the fall. And we did that not just based on a whim, we did that based on science and data and what it would take to open our campus. And I will tell you right now, today, we have 51,000 students on 4 campuses getting in-person education. And that's because 2 things. One is the value of education can't always just be done online. You can get a lot of the academic piece done, and yes, it's a right fit for a lot of folks. But to be able to do that in-person campus where our students can grow socially, emotionally, morally, physically, and then get the academic pieces, not just learning from their professors and their teachers, but also from each other. So there's no doubt that that's still high value. And that was one of the reasons we thought we saw enrollment increases here in Lincoln, in Omaha, and Kearney.
So one of the themes of your strategic plan when you came in as president was on workforce development. And that is a subject that is very near and dear to the readership of GI Jobs magazine and GI Jobs online. When veterans leave the service, they've got essentially 3 options, and they're not all mutually exclusive. We refer to them as the 3 E's: education, entrepreneurship, and employment. And we've got, so workforce development is just a huge and important component of that, especially when we're in some challenging employment times. Talk to us about some of the initiatives that you plan to do at Nebraska around workforce development.
I'm going to answer that question by first just making a comment about anybody that's transitioning and looking for what kind of work they want to go into. And although not everybody says, well, I'm going to go be a college president, I would just say the similarities between what I've done and what anybody can do is the value of a military background, the can-do spirit, getting things done, leadership, and then following your passion. I mean, that's what got me to this job. And I would say that could apply to anybody looking for what they want to do in transition. What we have done here in Nebraska is set up the conditions to bring people from out of state to come to our programs, get an incredible, one of the best value educations you can get. And if you follow what we outline, you'll graduate in 4 years or less, and we will get you a job right here in the state of Nebraska, where the quality of life, the value of a good life here is amazing. I've lived all over the world. I've lived in all four corners of the country. I've never lived in Nebraska. And now that I'm here, I get why they call it the good life here. People are happy. The unemployment rate is one of the lowest in the country. By the way, our infection rate in the pandemic is also one of the lowest. So restaurants and the quality of life here is actually quite good if we just figure out how to get Husker football back online with Big Ten. But there is something special about being here in Nebraska. So we have created the conditions for people to come to our programs, come get their education, whether they need a 4-year program or something less. And then we get them internships, meaningful internships that will lead to a job. And right now, out of our 51,000 students, a little bit over 20% of our students are from out of state. We're looking to grow that. We're looking to make our balance more of a 70% Nebraska and 30% out of state and international. And this program is designed to go after that. And our transitioning military population could be a critical part of that. Now, of course, we have Offutt Air Force Base, U.S. Strategic Command. So there is a military presence here. The National Guard is alive and well. But I'm talking about folks from all over the country who are looking for a place to settle and raise a family. This is a great place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I've driven through the state. I've never spent any time there, but you make a compelling case to,
I hear that a
to
lot.
visit.
I-80 is a major thoroughfare, but I tell you, you go stay in any of the small towns here, and they're all pretty similar, 12 square mile. A lot of these small towns, about 20 to 25,000 population. The people are absolutely awesome, and they are hardworking, genuine, sincere. It's a great place to be.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. One of the things that our readership is constantly looking at, and they feel oftentimes under-equipped to deal with things like, what industry should I go into? What occupation should I go into? You and I were both naval flight officers. Many of the troops are doing jobs in the military. The soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen are doing jobs that don't necessarily have a direct correlation in the private sector. And so many of our readership looks at, hey, what field should I go into? What industry should I go into? Is there a certain company that I might be a good fit for? What advice would you give them, and especially around a workforce development perspective of some fields that you think might be burgeoning and offering great opportunities for veterans?
Yeah, I would say that this is a time of reinvention. Our military come with so much talent, and they're so smart. There's almost no field they can't get into. Again, I would say try to follow the passion for something that you're interested in. There are a tremendous amount of opportunities out there still in the IT, the cybersecurity, manufacturing. Manufacturing, when I talk about manufacturing, I'm talking about companies that are now just opening up, and that's a big part of what we see here in Nebraska. And then there are the classic professions. Nursing is now exploding to another level, but there are also jobs that traditionally, you think about a state of Nebraska where 90% of the land mass is dedicated to farming and agriculture. Somebody might say, well, I don't want to really necessarily be in that or work the land. But there are elements of that are very high tech. In the ag tech world, we're learning how to operate drones and how to manage water. There are a tremendous amount of opportunities out there that you just have to look a little bit. And of course, our online pages have a lot of those offerings in some detail. But there is just about any opportunity out there for what somebody is looking for. And the job market is opening up.
Yes, sir. Dan, I'm going to pass it off to you. I know you've got a number of things that you want to ask the Admiral.
Sure. I'll start with a serious question. I want to get it out of the way first. Is it true that you escorted Tom Cruise around the Navy Fighter Weapons School during the filming of Top Gun?
So the detailed truth of that is I was tagged by the instructors at Top Gun. I think this was late February of '85 to meet him and his handler at the Miramar Officers Club the day he arrived so that he could start his training to get into a cockpit. So he got in a swimming pool the next day. So I was his handler for that first night, and we took him to the Officers Club, that storied place, and got to hang out for a few hours. So yes, I was one of his first contacts.
Wow.
Sir, did you guys sing You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling?
No, we did not. He had his hair down long and a ponytail because he had just finished the movie, I think, All the Right Moves. And we got along pretty well. He was very fascinated in why we did what we do as, aviators and naval flight officers. I still remember him saying, you guys don't get paid enough to do that. We said, well, we really don't do it for the pay. I said, you're going to get to understand that. And, as the story goes, he eventually fell in love with the speed and excitement of being in a jet fighter aircraft and went on to Days of Thunder and all the rest of it. So yeah, it was an interesting start. And of course, he's still flying and I'm not.
But you've done quite a bit of that. I think over 6,000 flight hours, and I think you hold the record amongst all naval aviators and naval flight officers for over 2,000 traps on a carrier.
That's right. And as I joke, I still have most of my own teeth.
Well, you've got quite a storied military career, Admiral, and it's probably one that's worthy of Hollywood. But you probably had a lot of different options coming out of the service. I wonder, why did you choose to come to Nebraska as president of the university system?
So, like a lot of military, we don't always get our first choice for what we want to do. And as I was transitioning from a 1-star admiral to a 2-star, I thought I would stay in the operational side of the fleet. That's what I thought my talent was. And the CNO, John Greenert, asked me to go up and run the Naval War College. And I just didn't see that coming. Even though I'm from Rhode Island and I got to go back to Rhode Island and be in Newport, I went a little bit reluctantly, to be quite frank. And then once I got up there, and I definitely had some things to do with the War College, I fell in love with that type of education. And I transitioned to the U.S. Naval Academy as superintendent, where I was for 5 years. And what I found is that I was a good fit to be in a leadership role in higher education. So as I was transitioning out, that was my first look to maybe go to an educational institution. But without I didn't have all the academic credentials. I don't have a PhD. So I just didn't see myself being a fit. And I did apply to some places and consequently got shut out. I went into the tech industry. I started to work for Salesforce within months of my retirement. And as I was beginning that transition, the University of Nebraska found me and they convinced me to apply. And they were looking for a change agent, somebody that brought leadership. The PhD was not a mandatory requirement, although they certainly desired that. And I applied, and lo and behold, I was picked. And as it turned out, this was all pre-COVID-19. As it turned out, they brought somebody here that had a lot of background in military planning, know how to make things happen. And we've been able to move that along here. I think as I wake up every day, I feel like I am truly in the right place at the right time.
What was your own transition like from the military? I mean, people no longer saluted you. People didn't jump to attention when you walked into a room. God forbid they might even called you Ted instead of Admiral. What was the most challenging part of your own transition?
I'll just say two things about that. One is when I walked off the stage in my retirement ceremony and I took my uniform off that night, and I've been very proud to wear a uniform for 38 years, 42 counting my midshipman years. I decided I wasn't going to wear that uniform again. I'm not going to put it on for ceremonies. So that was my first immediate decision. I know there's some people that will put them on for certain events. I decided that is my chapter that I'm putting away. And the second is I decided that I wanted to be known as Ted. And I have spent most of my time out here in Nebraska reminding people. They said, what do we call you? I said, Ted. That's my name. And, well, don't you want to be called Admiral? I said, that's what I did in my previous life, and I'm proud of that, but that's a title that I no longer have. And there'll be some people that want to use a title. And I said, well, then it's President Carter. That's my title as the University of Nebraska system. But for most people out here, it doesn't matter whether they're 19 years old and students or corporate executives. I go by Ted, and I'm quite comfortable with that. Same thing for you guys, Dan and Chris.
Okay. Well, you started working on your strategy as soon as you started your new job on January 1st. Weeks later, COVID hit. How did this change your strategy and the way you executed it?
So my coming in strategy was to look at how do we improve the value of education, make sure that people understand it's still important, and then how do we not just grow the university, but as the university goes here in Nebraska, so goes the state. The state of Nebraska has got a population of just under 2 million people. There's actually more cattle here than there are people today. And the population has only grown marginally since 100 years ago. And Nebraska has so much to offer, and what it does for the nation and what it does for the world in terms of food and water. We want to make sure that we set the conditions so that we could grow the university, not just in its own stature, but to provide an avenue for education for the youth of Nebraska and out of state, and then consequently grow. What COVID-19 taught us and continues to teach us, even though we put a pause on the strategy for a couple of months, is that everything that we had thought was important in the strategy was validated. And higher education has had to make a shift. I mean, words like hybrid education, remote, synchronous versus asynchronous remote education, words that were not in people's vernacular before are now common. Those are methodologies of delivery. They're not actually the strategy for what to do and why it's important. So we created a strategy that would welcome students. We opened up a thing called Nebraska Promise, which was free tuition to any Nebraskan whose annual income is $60,000 or less, which is higher than the median income here in Nebraska. We froze tuition for all of our programs for 2 years. We're the first major university in the country to do that. And then we just opened up this workforce scholarship incentive, which is out-of-state students can come to Nebraska, get basically the rate of an in-state tuition if they promise to take on internships and look at how they can go into the Nebraska workforce. And we've seen that response. We're going to invest in our faculty. We're going to bring them up to the equivalent of all of their higher education peers in terms of pay. And I just see the opportunity here to be terrific. I have a fantastic relationship with the Nebraska legislature. It's unique in this country. It's one body. It's called a unicameral, so there's no House and Senate. It's just one Senate, 49 senators representing 93 counties. The governor here is very close to the university, so having those relationships and knowing how to develop them, things I learned while I was at the Naval Academy, has become critically important. So getting everybody to be a recruiter, to bring students to our campus and know that we not only want them to come in the door, we want to find pathways for them to be successful. And we've invested in programs similar to what we did at the Naval Academy to improve graduation rates by investing in tutor programs, focusing on encouraging people to be part of clubs and feeling inclusive, understanding what diversity and inclusion really means, especially today when those voices need to be heard. We have embraced all those things. All the things that I knew were important in Naval Academy are still important at any higher education institution, and we've brought those here to Nebraska.
Is there any part of your military career that you think best equipped you to lead through this pandemic, through this crisis?
Having been in a lot of different ready rooms and fighter squadrons, and then having the opportunity to rebuild an aircraft carrier in Carl Vinson in 2006 to 2009, my particular leadership style, and I think the one that has proven to be most successful in the military, is a collaborative kind of player-coach style. And a lot of people asked me when I came here, they said, well, aren't you going to have a hard time people not doing exactly what you say just because you say it? And that's never been the way that I've learned to lead. It's kind of more of the Stockdale model, that if you bring people in collaboratively, you empower them to do their job, give them the right resources, and then let them go do their job, they'll never let you down. And that's the style of leadership that I bring here. And I find that's been an excellent fit thus far.
Military and veteran students often find college campuses intimidating after the military. Do you think having a veteran at the helm helps ease that stress, that anxiety?
I would hope so. I was worried about that a little bit when I first came here. My path to taking over the presidency was maybe a little different than others. I mean, I interviewed and then they made me what they call a priority candidate. And then I had a 30-day vetting period in November where I traveled all over the state, talked to every constituency of Nebraska, from farmers to business leaders to billionaires to the students and the families. And I wondered whether they would welcome somebody with a long military background. And what I found is, yes, they did. And Nebraskans are very proud Americans. They support their military in a tremendous way. So I have found that that's been very welcomed here. I don't overplay that, but for a transitioning military officer or soldier, airman, Marine, sailor to come here, I'm going to tell you, they feel incredibly comfortable.
Sir, Dan, if I could interrupt, building on that, one of the things that we found our readership struggles with is that identity. What is their civilian identity? In the military, you've got a title, you've got a rank, you've got a chest full of ribbons and medals and track record and a status, and you've got many things that you've accomplished. You walk into any civilian setting and people aren't wearing uniforms, and who's in charge and what have they done and what's their background. It's not as visible. And so I think one of the things that our readership struggles with is that loss of identity and what is my new identity. It sounds like you've done, you've thought a lot about that and have obviously formed that for yourself. What advice would you give to a young man or woman leaving the service today in their early to mid 20s, struggling with that civilian identity?
Yeah, this starts to speak to a trait that I think is becoming more and more important than ever. We, those that come out of the military, are proud of our service. We're proud of where we've been. We wear our uniform with pride. You should never lose that. You should never let that go away. You shouldn't be afraid to talk about some of your military experiences. But I would also submit that in today's world, one of the traits that will really move you ahead is the trait of humility. You don't have to go in and brag about yourself. People will find out who you are very quickly by just being honest and true to yourself. Speak clear, know what it is that you want to say and say it. But you don't have to convince somebody that you're the greatest fill in the blank. They'll get to know that about you. And you have to be willing to try to do something a little bit different, maybe even get a little bit out of your comfort zone. What made you successful in the military will likely make you successful in the next chapter, but you're going to have to look to how do you get to that next level. And I've had to do that myself. There's a lot of things that I thought I knew about higher ed, and I can tell you I've learned an awful lot here just in the last 8 months that I've been here. And I have to admit, sometimes when I walk into the room, I'm probably not the smartest person in the room about whatever topic we're talking about. That might not have been true in what I did, certainly in the last few years of my military experience or being as a squadron commander preparing to go into combat. But in this case, I have to accept that there are going to be some people that have longer background in higher ed, maybe in the economics of some of the things that we're trying to do. So you have to be a tremendous listener, and you have to check your ego at the door, be humble in your approach, and be ready to be collaborative. And then at the end of the day, if you're in a leadership role, don't be afraid to assert your 51% of the vote and lead. But that humility piece will get you very far in today's world.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, so the October issue of GI Jobs is featuring, as you know, the college presidents who served the list, and there's several dozen that we have on that list. Obviously, you're one of them. So what advantages do you think military veterans do bring in leadership to higher education?
So as we went into the height of this pandemic, and I was starting to talk to my peers all over the country at the highest levels, to include the Ivy Leagues, not just the service academies, Even my counterpart who came out of West Point, Bob Caslin, retired lieutenant general, and he took over the campus leadership at University of South Carolina. The thing that I found that the retired military folks brought is a sense of bias for action, take this kind of analytical mind for how to do military planning and work collaboratively with others to provide solutions. I saw in the middle of the pandemic that there were kind of three groups of campus leaders. There were those that had this bias for action. Many of them were retired military, but not all. There were some that just wanted to be in disbelief and think this would just kind of go away. And then there were some that were waiting for just a certain amount of perfect information before they'd make a decision. And this even went to whether they would open up their campus or not. And I kind of identified those people as those that, kind of the stargazers. I'm looking at the stars, I'm waiting for that solution to just show up to me with all the right information. We in the military know that we never have all perfect information. The fog of war is a real thing. But even in all other facets of training and education, that we are not going to always have perfect information. We get the best amount of information we can, and then we deal with it and make decisions on it. That has worked well for us here. And you have to be ready to shift, because there will be a time where even though you may have 80% of the right solution, you may have to make some adjustments and be dynamic. People coming out of the military get that part already, and that's a great fit. And that's why retiring military folks have a great fit in any walk of the work life.
So in-person classes started at Nebraska August 24th. How's it going so far?
Well, we've certainly had, a few positive cases of COVID-19. We had a plan for how to deal with that. We had a great deal of planning going into how to de-densify, make classroom spaces smaller. It's interesting. You think about what dorm life looks like on a college campus. A big part of Nebraska living is in the Greek life, the fraternities and sororities, a big part of campus life. We've had to spend a little bit more time there trying to get the behavior right in those parts of campus living than actually the dorms or in the classrooms. So, it's still a work in progress. There's right now not a risk of us shutting down, which you've seen on a lot of other campuses. I think we've done a good job of getting the student campus leaders to be very vocal about, how life needs to go on. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we have gotten it pretty close to right coming out of the gate, and there's still more work to be done.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're drawing close to the end of our time that we promised you we'd keep you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience, transitioning service members, veterans, or families, maybe perhaps why they might consider coming to Nebraska?
Well, I think anybody that is served honorably in our military should not only just be proud of what they've done, they should also take stock in the fact that they're a fairly low percentage of Americans that have done that. Less than 1% of our American population is actively serving in uniform. That gives them a special cachet to be able to transition into that next phase of life and to look where they may go. Coming to the central part of this country is a great option, and I would submit that many people should take a look at us, not just for what we have in educational programs, but for the quality of life and the workforce that we have here in Nebraska.
Fantastic. Chris, was there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Ted, I just
Yes.
want to thank you for spending time with us and sharing your wisdom with our readership. It's been a pleasure, and I want to thank you personally for continuing to serve. It's great to see people like you continuing to serve, especially in higher education, forming our young people. That's the future. So thank you for your time today, and best of luck this coming year.
I appreciate it. It's great to talk to you guys. Great to see you. And thanks for what you do in helping our military members transition.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, well, obviously we're still recording. I'll try to figure out how to get this file and get it to you guys, assuming that you want to have this file. So that's some work I need to do, and we'll be in touch if you need anything else.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right,
Best of luck
have
to
a
you.
great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.